Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sports Vision, WMAQ listening in. What more can you say about a guy who had a great high school career, sensational college career, tremendous professional career, now outstanding in the business field? But Doc, enough about me.
I always like to say that Michael got to play with me for a year at North Carolina. I think it really helped him.
Spectacular player from the beginning.
You can see right away Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer.
And showed what an impact he was going to have on the league.
This is NB87, celebrating the 30-year anniversary of Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls and the 1987 NBA season. Now here's your hosts, Adam Ryan and Aaron Steen.
Welcome back to another episode of NB87. We're up to episode 11. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Aaron, welcome back to you. Thanks again for being a part of the show, mate. How are you today?
Welcome back, Adam.
I'm pleased to be here. Love to read out a podcast review that we received recently, mate, on the USA iTunes store. The reviewer's name via Google Translate looks like it's Kolya, Kolya. I've completely butchered that name. I'm sorry, mate. But thank you very much for your review. And it reads, a must for any basketball statistics and history fan. I grew up watching the 1990s NBA and always enjoyed learning more about previous decades, and I really couldn't have found a better podcast. Both the interviews and recaps of the press from given time periods are gold. Oh, that's high praise. And not that I would blame them if they did, but the show exists without 100 commercial reads throughout, which I have to mention as a plus. Thanks. Now that reminds me, mate, I better mention our sponsor for this episode is... I don't actually have one, but we'd love one. Thank you very much to Kolya. I've obviously butchered that pronunciation.
Kolya, trust me, mate, we would love to be able to give you 100 commercial reads throughout the show, because that means that we actually have a sponsor for the show. And after that fantastic review, I'm going to have to get an extension put on the studio here at my house to fit my big head in.
We interrupted this podcast review to read you our latest sponsors. No, not to be. In all sincerity, that's fantastic to hear. Great to get reviews of the podcast. It always gives us a bit of extra motivation there to continue along with what we're doing here, mate. So thank you again for that.
NBA News, Notes and Quotes. March 16th through 30th, 1987.
Chicago at Houston in front of 16,279 saw the Rockets hold on for a 1-point win, 97-96. The Bulls' record was an even 500 at that stage, 32-32. For the Bulls, Jordan had a great game, 44 points, 4 boards, 5 assists and 4 steals. Charles Oakley had 17 points and 15 boards. Gene Banks, 13 points, and Dave Corzine, 10 points and 7 boards. For Houston, Akeem had 28 points and 9 rebounds. Rodney McRae, 22 points and 7 boards. And Robert Reed had a great game, 11 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists.
Doug Collins had his 12 players stand in a circle and sing Kumbaya. No, not really. As he went around the playing group asking them questions regarding the team's 4-game losing streak. John Macbeth Paxson said in the article that, and I quote, Collins does this sometimes and it helps, end quote. Bob Sakamoto added that Michael Jordan in particular would be doing some soul-searching with his 12 for 42 shooting in his past 2 games. The Sack added that Jordan has hit a slump each year of his career during this part of the season. Mind you, taking away his injured 85-86 season, this accounts for a grand total of 2 seasons, so make of that what you will. The Bulls' third straight defeat by a point dropped them to 32-32 on the year, and a 5-game losing streak. Bob Sakamoto added that Coach Collins was not going to shave until the Bulls win another game, but after this one, it might be smart to keep him away from a razor. Everything seemed so right as MJ drew Akeem Abdul-Olajuwon's 6th foul and hit both foul shots to give the Bulls a 1-point lead. Alan Lavelle then missed a reverse layup, only to have future Bull and NBA world champion Rodney McRae tip in the miss, which would give the Rockets the win after Jordan's last-second 45-footer missed the mark.
Now that's where I want to see game footage of this. This game doesn't exist in trading circles as far as I'm aware. Just about to see Jordan try and launch a 45-footer to win the game at Houston in just a random regular season matchup. That would have been pretty cool.
The NBA's leading defensive rebounder, Charles Oakley, took himself out of the play by challenging Level's shot, leaving McRae open for the offensive rebound. Oak added post-game that other players need to help with little things, such as boxing out the defensive boards. Jordan was able to break out of his 2-game slump, and it was only foul trouble that prevented him from a 50 or 60-point night in this one. The Bulls were due up in Dallas the following night for their 4th in 5 nights.
The scheduling was so much different back in the 80s. 2 other games, mate, were played on this date. Dale Ellis, great friend of the show, episode 57, led all scorers with 33 points, leading his Sonics to a 122-111 win versus the Spurs. At Detroit, Indiana were poleaxed 115-95 behind Adrian Dantley's 31-point effort. At the Omni in Atlanta, Dominique opened both barrels on the Bullets, dropping 43 points, 18 of which were in the first, as the Hawks thumped Washington 118-98. Tree Rollins' injured toe was stepped on in the fourth quarter. Post-game, a team doctor said, quote, "We won't know the severity of the incident until we assess X-ray results tomorrow," end quote. I don't know why I bother. Denver's 133-111 demolition job at New York was overshadowed by the Knicks fans' treatment of Patrick Ewing. Now, this is really extraordinary stuff, mate. An article from the Asbury Park Press in New Jersey, I've probably butchered that name, the following day detailed the rough treatment that he received from some of the alleged fans in New York. Quote, "He was booed in earnest for the first time in his 2-year career as a Knick," end quote. He scored 11 points on 4 of 12 shooting. He had 3 rebounds and committed 3 turnovers. Said Ewing, quote, "It always was like that in college, so I'm used to it," end quote. Now, fans attending the game received a life-size colour poster of Ewing. 4 of the posters made thuds, that's a direct quote, landing on the court. One fan stood up, turned toward Ewing, ripped his poster into shreds and threw the pieces towards the court. It's pretty harsh. John Condon's announcement, quote, "Please refrain from throwing objects on the court. There are 10 excellent athletes on the floor," end quote. Drew laughs, boos, and cheers, a sarcastic statement hard to dismiss during the Knicks' 4th straight loss. So John Condon there, the classic PA announcer for the Knicks, throwing in a bit of shade there on the Knicks team, I guess at that stage, by saying there's 10 excellent players on the court. Listen to episode 82 of my podcast. Here's a shameless self-promotion. For more details on Ewing's life and rise to the NBA, his head coach from high school and his mentor, Mike Jarvis, was my guest. Still on the 17th year, mate, Chicago at Dallas in front of 17,007 fans saw the Mavericks win 114-96. This was Chicago's 6th straight loss, and they dropped to 32-33. For the Bulls, Oakley was the top scorer with 23 points, 16 rebounds and 3 assists. How dependable was Oak? MJ had 21 points, 3 rebounds and 9 assists. Sadal Threet, great friend of the show, former guest, episode 12. Dave Corzine and John Paxson had 14, 12 and 10 points respectively. For Dallas, Mark Aguirre had 31 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, 3 steals and 3 blocks. What a great box score there. And Sam Perkins had 27 points and 15 rebounds. Derek Harper, 17 points and 8 assists. And James Donaldson had 16 points and 10 rebounds. Now, mate, this was only the 3rd time in 65 games that Jordan wasn't the Bulls' high scorer.
Doug Collins met with his team for 28 minutes after losing their 6th straight to calmly ask his troops why their ball club had deteriorated so much over the past 12 days. Collins was pleasantly surprised at the response as his players spoke up rather than the coaches doing all the talking like in previous meetings. No Bull was in more need of constructive criticism than the aforementioned Charles Oakley, who backed up his big game in Houston by committing 10 turnovers. Despite butting heads with not literally, but with Coach Collins on his turnovers this season, Oakley admitted his head coach had a legitimate concern with his mental mistakes. Though he wasn't the only culprit, with River Banks shooting 1 for 7 and MJ going 7 for 21. John Macbeth Paxson's second 3-pointer drew the Bulls, score-wise. He didn't actually draw the team with pencils or, crayons or... Anyway, I digress. Drew the Bulls within 5, 100-95 with 3:48 remaining before the high-powered Mavs reeled off a 14-1 run. Long-arm Sam Perkins scored 16 in the final term.
Though his Clippers lost again, 134-123 at Portland and dropped to 11-52, 8th pick in the 84 NBA draft, Lancaster Gordon blazed his way to 33 points off the bench, if you don't mind, in just 28 minutes on 13 of 25 shooting, Kiki led the Vanderway for Portland with 30 points. And the LA Lakers cruised to a ninth straight win, 111-97 over the visiting Utah Jazz. Magic was just that, notching his 5th triple-double of the season with 27 points, 19 assists and 10 rebounds. It was the Jazz's 27th defeat at the Forum in 29 games.
On March 19, despite the Bulls losing skid, podcast favourite Dave Corzine said this Chicago team was easily the closest knit of his 5 Bulls seasons. Nice little tidbit, and also very cool to hear that they all like to knit. Ben Poquet, coming from one of the league's biggest losers, the Cavaliers, is something of an expert in defeatism, wrote Bob Sakamoto. Poquet added the support on and off the court is something he has never experienced from a team that is struggling with their on-court performance.
That's an interesting contrast. Good to hear, mate. Another great little tidbit there you've uncovered. Love it anytime Dave Corzine's involved in pretty much anything, so well done on that front. At home, New York had a stirring 111-105 overtime win versus Indiana. That victory, however, was quickly dampened as Patrick Ewing slipped on a wet spot during the first quarter and sprained a ligament in his left knee. He would miss the remainder of the season. In 63 games, Pat averaged 21.5 points, 8.8 rebounds and 2.3 blocks per contest. That same day, in March 19, Chicago at LA Clippers in front of 15,371 fans, the first sellout for the Clippers in 2 years, saw the Bulls win quite handily 114-97 and improve to 33-33. Now for Chicago, Jordan had a blinder, 40 points, 7 rebounds and 4 blocks. Gene Banks had a great game, and we'll hear his name quite a bit in this episode. 24 points, 6 rebounds and 8 assists, so fantastic stuff there from Gene Banks. And Charles Oakley, another great game for him, 14 points and 13 rebounds. For the Clippers, ex-Bull Quinton Daly, 22 points. Benoit Benjamin, 20 points and 8 rebounds. And Michael Cage, 17 points and 10 rebounds. Far from Rusty Cage there. Soundgarden fans, hello to you.
This game's available on YouTube, isn't it, Adam?
Yep, this is the one I think where Jack Nicholson's actually sitting right down near the Bulls bench and Jordan gets a breakaway dunk going to the right of screen, I'm pretty sure, and Jack Nicholson's celebrating big time.
Off a jump ball.
Definitely off a jump ball.
I reckon that dunk that MJ did, images of that one are very well known.
Yeah, plenty of photos of that.
It was made into at least 1 or 2 posters. Yeah, it was a very cool play.
Yep.
John Macbeth Paxson said post-game that the Bulls were confident of getting the pro-Michael crowd on their side due to the Clippers' poor season. The Clippers sold out their first game in 2 seasons as LA A-listers such as the aforementioned Jack Nicholson and O.J. Simpson made the trek to the sports arena to see the NBA's leading man in action. The Clippers held MJ scoreless for the first 4 minutes of the game before MJ finished the first term with 11 and then had 16 at the main break. In a cool tidbit, Charles Oakley was hit with a technical by Jess Kersey early in the game. Oak then accidentally hit Kersey in the head with an errant pass a little later in that same quarter.
Accidentally is the key word there, we hope.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. In Boston, Larry Bird scored 19 of his 42 points in the fourth quarter, including his team's last 9, leading the Celtics to a 112-108 win versus Seattle. That extended Boston's home winning streak to 21 games at that stage. Dale Ellis paced the Sonics with 31 points. Dominique Wilkins exploded for 41 points and 16 rebounds as Atlanta defeated the visiting Bucks of Milwaukee 114-97. Moving on to the 21st of March, at Milwaukee, Philadelphia triumphed 105-102 behind Charles Barkley's 32 points and Roy Hinson's 27 points, 13 of which were in the fourth quarter. Roy is a former guest and great friend of the show, of course, episode 81. Things got wild and woolly at Dallas as the Mavericks held off Detroit 122-118 behind 26 points from Rolando Blackman, a great friend of the show, former guest, episode 70. Mark Aguirre, complaining repeatedly to referee Jack Neese about being fouled, was given the heave-ho late in the second quarter. He drew 2 quick technical fouls and was sent on his way. Not sure how detailed the resulting drawings were. To make matters worse, Jack Neese had to referee most of the game by himself as Bill Saar hyperextended his knee whilst trying to break up a skirmish between James Donaldson and Bill Laimbeer less than a minute into the game.
I'd put good money on Bill Laimbeer having something to do with that hyperextended knee. There'd be arms, limbs, there'd be stuff going everywhere. Billy would have seen the opportunity and he would have given Billy Saar the lemon and SARS, mate.
I love it. Lemon and sauce. That's funny. Like, this is another thing about the 80s. They only had the 2 referees on court at this stage. So once Bill Saar was on his way, Jack Neese is left to basically referee the game for the 47 of the 48 minutes, because I'm pretty sure it happened with like 11 minutes and 5 seconds left in the first quarter. So no foresight whatsoever to actually have an alternate ref, or an alternate ref, I guess as they say over there in the States. In Maryland, Denver were 117-107 winners over the Washington Bullets. For the Nuggets, the great Alex English had 37 points, and Fat Lever dialed up his 15th triple-double of the season with 27 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists. Same day, Chicago at Sacramento in front of 10,333 saw the Bulls have a 112-97 win and improve to 34-33. For Chicago, Jordan had 40 points, 5 assists and 4 steals. Johnny Pax, 19 points. Charles Oakley, another very dependable 16-point and 13 rebound effort. And Dave Corzine, have a listen to this, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists and 2 blocks. And that tied his career-high assist mark, also equaling a February 16, 1986 game versus Dallas. So good stuff there from Dave. For Sacramento, Eddie Johnson, another great friend of the show, episode 41, had 29 points. Otis Thorpe had 15 points and 10 boards. And Reggie Theus, 15 points and 13 assists. So good stuff there from Rush Street Reggie.
The Bulls jumped out to a 27-10 lead in the first term behind 15 points and 3 steals from Michael Jordan, whose jump shot didn't fail him in this game. As a team, Chicago went 14 of 22 in the first quarter, as they also got strong starts from Geno Banks and Dave Corzine. As MJ rested in the second term, friend of the show, Sadale Threet, hit 4 jumpers in the quarter to help the Bulls to a 15-point halftime lead. The third term then belonged to John Macbeth Paxson as he hit 3 straight 3-pointers, it's a lot of threes, to extend the lead to 19 points. It was fortunate that the Bulls were on fire from the field as they were having trouble stopping the Kings from scoring. Friend of the show, Eddie Johnson, hit his 4th 3 in the third, and a late Kings run had them down only 5 after 3. Jordan then took over in the 4th at both ends of the floor to put the Kings to sleep.
And joining them in that sleep are our listeners. after that previous run of wordage. That night, March 22, Chicago at Portland in front of 12,666 saw the Blazers hang on for a 115-113 victory. Chicago dropped back to 500 at 34-34. Jordan had another magnificent game, at least in the scoring column. He had 46 points, just 1 rebound, more on that in a moment, 6 assists and 4 steals. Charles Oakley had an absolute ripper, 26 points and 14 rebounds. Gene Banks, 12 points, and no other Chicago Bull scored 10 or more. For Portland, Kiki Vandeweghe had 28 points. Steve Johnson, ex-Bull, had 24 points and 7 boards. Clyde Drexler, 23 points, 6 assists. And Terry Porter, 11 points and 11 assists. Good game there from Terry. Now, in MJ's career, he had only 8 0-rebound games, one of which was with Washington, and he had 27 1-rebound games. 6 of those were with Washington. Just thought it's worth mentioning. Thank you there to the great basketballreference.com for those statistics and pretty much every other stat we reel off throughout this entire series. Probably should consider getting them as a sponsor, mate.
How good would that be?
I might hit them up.
Portland operations manager Bucky Buckwalter proclaimed in the previous Sunday's Tribune that he wouldn't take Clyde Drexler for Michael Jordan in a trade because of what Drexler does that Jordan doesn't to make his teammates better.
Jeez.
Chicago Bulls coach Doug Collins then said he'd ask Buckwalter if he has a brain tumour.
What? Is that for real?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
When MJ heard the quote, he said it was sour grapes, stemming from the 1984 NBA draft. And I quote, "They went big and Chicago went versatile and here I am," end quote.
Oh, that's a great quote. Some of the comments these guys, I don't know if get away with is the right wording, but looking back on them decades later.
Bit crude.
Suspect. Yeah, true.
Aside from sour grapes, the Bulls did a good job preventing Portland's vaunted running game and had a lead until a Terry Porter steal led to a James Joseph Paxson basket and a 111-110 Blazer lead.
You just wanted to say that his full name, didn't you, just to match his brother.
The Bulls played the second half without John Macbeth Paxson, who re-aggravated a jammed toe, and despite good play from Elston Turner and friend of the show, Sadale Threet, they looked disorganised down the stretch without their floor general Paxson. Rookie Brad Sellers was benched for this game, with Doug Collins unhappy with his effort in practice. Friend of the show, Mike Brown, Elston Turner, and gentle Ben Poquet will continue to get Sellers minutes in the meantime.
There you go, mate. Lots of friends of the show being mentioned today, which is fantastic. Mike Brown, off the top of my head, I'd say that's episode 62. Don't quote me on it. Who would quote me? Moving on, mate. Xavier McDaniel's Seattle Supersonics visited Madison Square... Learn to speak, Adam. Xavier McDaniel's Supersonics visited Madison Square Garden, where X marked the spot, laying down 40 points on the Knicks in Seattle's 126-121 overtime win. It was a then career high for the X-Man and would be the fourth highest scoring game of his career. He'd have 42 in a May 1987 game, which I'm sure we'll mention in passing or in shooting in a future episode. Dallas won for the first time ever in the city of brotherly love, 103-100. Roe Blackman's 38 points were too much for Philadelphia. Did I mention he is a great friend of the show?
No.
Episode 72. Too much for Philadelphia. Charles Barkley had 24 points, and Tim McCormick had a great game. He had 22 points for the Sixers. And the Nuggets visited Utah, where Darryl Walker stepped up with an equal career high 39 points in his team's 122-118 loss.
How does Darryl Walker score 39 points?
Just 12 days earlier, Walker had dropped 39 on the Jazz at McNichols Arena in Denver.
It must be a different Darryl Walker, surely.
Possibly, because we sort of know him more as a defensive-minded player, to say the least. That's what he built his career on, basically. But, yeah, clearly something must have triggered him to perform like this in Utah and back in Denver against the Jazz as well. And I think we mentioned it in the previous episode. That was the highest amount he'd score in his whole career, and he did it twice in the span of 12 days. Hopefully, if he joins the show at a future date, we might be able to find out the answer to that puzzling question. What a conundrum.
Hello to Darryl, if you're listening. Yeah, definitely a more than pedestrian effort by Walker.
Yeah, you had to get one better. Good play.
March 24, the 76ers' upcoming visit to Chicago Stadium was to represent Julius the Dr. Irving's last NBA game in Chicago of his illustrious career. The Doc's farewell tour is one of the biggest in NBA history, with tributes in his last stop in each NBA city he visits, writes Bob Sakamoto. Dr. J added that the send-off far exceeded anything that he anticipated. The Doc will be in street clothes for the game with a fractured finger.
Now, this game's also on YouTube. Definitely worth having a look at. There's a pre-game ceremony as well that involves none other than the great redhead himself, Johnny Red Kerr. So definitely check that out as well, mate.
The aforementioned Johnny Red Kerr compared the farewell for Irving to the farewell for Boston Celtics great Bub Cousy. Red was on hand at Boston Garden as a member of the Syracuse Nats and said that Coos was showered with gifts and even got a telegram from President John F. Kennedy. When it came time for Coos to speak to the crowd, he started saying, and I quote, I, end quote, and couldn't finish. It was then someone yelled out, "We love you, Coos," from the upper deck, and the place went bananas. Kerr's teammate Dolph Shays then looked at him and asked, "Red, do you think we have a chance tonight?" Kerr answered, "I thought we did until I looked up and saw the two referees crying."
Oh, that's fantastic. This is great stuff.
More Red Kerr gems to come, Adam.
That is fantastic.
The Bulls have a pre-game ceremony planned, which includes Johnny Kerr, who signed Irving to his first pro contract with the Virginia Squires, and Doug Collins, Irving's teammate for 8 seasons.
Dallas's Mark Aguirre had a would-be season-high 43 points, the next highest individual output on this busy day in the NBA, 9 games in total. He steered the Mavericks to a 119-107 win against the New Jersey Nets at Brendan Byrne Arena. It was the 6th straight win for Dallas.
Who is Brendan Byrne? Adam, any idea?
That's a fantastic question. I don't even know. I've never looked into who he actually was. Let me have a quick Google, mate. This is exciting stuff. Brendan Byrne Arena. Let's find out. Okay, his name's actually Brendan Arena. His middle name's Byrne. Fair enough. No, let's have a look. Brendan Byrne is a former governor of New Jersey.
There we go.
There you go. Served as the 47th governor of New Jersey from 1974 to 1982. Good stuff, mate. Thanks for asking that question, because now we know.
Yeah, that's cool.
He died at age 93. Early January 2018.
Wow.
R.I.P. to Brendan Byrne. Atlanta, visiting Washington, won the game 96-87. For the Hawks, Dominic Wilkins had 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 stitches after copying an errant elbow in the first quarter. On that day as well, Philadelphia at Chicago, the game we were talking about, mate, in front of 18,122 fans, saw the Bulls hold on for a 93-91 win and improved to 35-34. Jordan was otherworldly in this game, no other way you can say it. 56 points, 7 rebounds, and 8 steals, and Gene Banks had 13 points. Interestingly, no other Bulls player scored more than 8 points in the game. For Philadelphia, Steve Coulter, ex-Chicago Bull, had 21 points. Great game from him. Charles Barkley, 17 points and 25 boards to go along with 6 assists. Andrew Toney had 14 points, and Roy Hinson, episode 81, great friend of the show, had 9 rebounds.
Shameless.
And Steve Coulter played for the Bulls in this same season through late December of 1986, so he would have loved having a 20.1 outing against his former team. A bit of retribution there.
The Bulls almost gave Julius Erving one too many gifts, wrote Bob Sakamoto. The Bulls virtually self-destructed in front of 18,122 fans at Chicago Stadium. The final term included 5 of Jordan's 7 turnovers, and in the final 34 seconds, Oakley and friend of the show Threet missed 6 free throws between them. Oakley was called for a technical foul, and Threet committed a turnover as the short-handed Sixers went on an 11-4 run late in the game. With 18 seconds remaining, the Bulls led 93-86 after 2 Paxson free throws. That's when Steve Buffon Coulter exploded.
The Buffon is back. He takes it on Chicago with a vengeance.
He hit a three-pointer, then stole friend of the show Sadell Threet's inbounds pass and made a layup. That's when Threet, after a spray from Coach Collins about the turnover, lost concentration and missed 2 free throws before Coulter's 13-footer fell short with 2 seconds remaining. Tempers flared in the game with friend of the show Mike Brown and Tim McCormick going at it at half court, with Brown taking a swing at him. And also Oakley and Danny Vrains also got into it after Vrains fouled Oakley hard.
Apparently Danny said to Oak, "You've got no brains." That's what prompted the fight. That's just stupid. I'll edit that out, don't worry about that.
Johnny Kerr introduced Irving pre-game to the crowd during his farewell presentation in true Red Kerr humour. He said, enjoy this, Adam, "This man had an illustrious high school career, an illustrious college career, and an illustrious career in the pros. But enough about me."
That is great. That is great. I was just watching you on the screen there rather than actually looking at our notes.
I was wondering, actually, about that.
Just 3 games were played on this date. We're talking about the 25th now. The closest margin of victory was 10 points as Utah defeated the hapless LA Clippers 111-101. That dropped LA to a miserable 12-56.
On March 26th, the SAC detailed the reduction in playing time for guard Elston Turner since the All-Star break from key reserve to barely playing. Turner had decided to take the route of speaking to Coach Collins about his concerns before speaking to the press and causing friction. Collins explained that it wasn't Turner's fault that his playing time had reduced. His ability to sacrifice for the good of the team is a common trait in this, and I quote, team of character, end quote, as named by GM Jerry Krause. Turner added that his ability to keep quiet and not rock the boat might be his greatest weakness, and added that Charles Oakley's complaining about getting more plays ran for him resulted in Collins running more plays for him.
It was his greatest weakness to a fault because I actually thought he wasn't even part of the roster. So apologies there to Elston Turner if you're listening. He had a solid career, let's be honest. Boston visited Landover, where Washington held on for a huge 106-103 win over the Celtics. For Boston, Bird had 22 points, 9 rebounds and 9 assists, ably assisted by McHale with 21 and 15, and the Chief, who had 21 and 10 boards. However, the Bullets had more firepower, led by 1982 All-Rookie selection Jay Vincent and his 28 points. Jay Vincent's brother, Sam, is a recent guest on my podcast, episode 83. Moses Malone returned from an 8-game absence to register 23 points and 6 rebounds in just 25 minutes. And Manute Bol had 6 points, 17 rebounds and 12 blocks. Plus, late in the game, according to Baltimore's Evening Sun, quote, wound up and fired a roundhouse right at Boston's Connor Henry. Mike Tyson has nothing to worry about, end quote. I thought that was worth mentioning there, mate. Minute just starting to swing cut lunches left, right and centre.
1980s Minute Bowl. He loved to bring back the biff a little bit, didn't he?
He did. Chicago at New Jersey. Now we're talking about the 26th of March. In front of 15,011 fans. Saw the Nets hang on for a 109-107 win. Again, the Bulls dropped to 500 at 35-35. Jordan had 40 points, 6 boards, 7 assists and 4 steals. Dave Corzine had 18 points and 11 rebounds. Geno Banks, another great game, 15 points and 7 boards. And Charles Oakley, another great game from him, 14 points and 13 rebounds. For the Nets, Orlando Woolridge, ex-Chicago Bull, 23 points. Buck Williams, 19 points and 10 boards. Ben Coleman, 18 points and 9 rebounds. Kevin McKenna had 15 points. And Pearl Washington, 8 points and 9 assists. Now, Ben Coleman, mate, drafted by Chicago in 1984. Second round pick, number 37 overall. Did not play for the Bulls. Interesting little tidbit there.
The Bulls squandered a 79...
So interesting, mate. You didn't even add a comment. Well done.
The Bulls squandered a 79-70 lead in the third term, and the Nets took control to take a 107-101 lead late in the fourth. 3 straight defensive stops and 6 straight Bulls points had the game tied at 107. New Jersey won on the back of a Ray Williams jumper and Jordan stopping defense in the final 740 by Bulls rookie camp reject Kevin Bluey McKenna.
Bluey? You've made that up.
Hello to Guy McKenna, if you're listening.
I knew there was some sort of link there. Our Australian listeners will likely get that if they're an AFL fan.
All Jordan got in that span were 4 free throws, and McKenna said he didn't even deserve those, with the referees giving him too many automatic calls. The Bulls gambled on double-teaming Charles Linwood Williams and former Bull Orlando Woolridge, only to have Blue McKenna hit 5 of 6 from three-point land.
I like that he's now automatically become Bluey McKenna. That's fantastic. Be interesting to see what sort of stories he may have from the Bulls rookie camp, particularly as he missed out on getting a Guernsey. Literally getting a Guernsey. A football Guernsey. That was funny to about 3 people.
He'd be salty. In other NBA news, the Houston Rockets were showing interest in signing former Bull George Gervin, who would become available to play for them should his De Roma team of the Italian League miss their playoffs.
Well, mate, that's interesting that you've uncovered that, because another interesting tidbit from the Chicago Tribune that I came across, the Houston Rockets were trying to sign former Bull George Gervin. He played 84 of the Bulls' 85 games the previous season before jettisoning overseas to play in the Italian League.
That is fascinating stuff.
Sounds familiar. Boston at Chicago in front of 18,122. This is on March 27. Saw the Celtics have a 111-106 victory, and the Bulls dropped below 500 to 35-36. Johnny Paxson, 23 points. Brad Sellers, 23 points and 9 boards. And Michael Jordan, 22 points, 7 rebounds and 7 assists. And Dave Corzine, 17 points and 10 rebounds. For Boston, Larry Bird was a man possessed, 41 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. Kevin McHale had 21 points, 7 boards. Chief had 18 points. Jerry Seasting, 14 points. Danny Ainge, 10 points and 15 assists.
The Bulls were in a fight with Indiana for the 7th spot in the playoffs and avoiding a first-round playoff meeting with these Boston Celtics. John Macbeth Paxson added post-game that they don't want to play Boston. I don't think anyone wants to. Bird put on an exhibition in scoring 33 of his 41 on 13 for 20 shooting in the first half alone. Ben Poquet's ineffectiveness gave maligned rookie Brad Sellers an opportunity. The underachieving Sellers had his best game in some time, finishing with 23 points. His night, along with Paxson and Corzine, compensated a little for Jordan's rough shooting night, as he went 7 for 22 from the field. The Bulls went on a 9-0 run with 2:34 remaining, down 109-97, highlighted by a Charles Oakley three-pointer.
Gotta love that when the big oak steps up and knocks down a bomb from 3-point range.
2 Bulls team records were broken in this game. The Bulls broke their all-time home attendance record with 5 games still to play, and Jordan set the single-season team record for steals that he set as a rookie in 84-85.
Love those little stats.
In other NBA idbits, the Denver Nuggets were the only team in the NBA to this point not to hold a team below 100 points in a game.
That's a great idbit, mate. Did you mean to say idbit?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did?
Yes.
What the hell is an idbit?
I realised that I left the T off.
That's one of the great idbits of all time, that one. Speaking of idbits, mate, Coach Dick Motter recorded his 800th NBA victory in Dallas's 114-107 win at Washington. He ranked third all-time, as it stood in 1987, on the victory list, behind only Red Auerbach with 938 and Jack Ramsey with 822. On this same date, mate, the 28th, for the Golden State Warriors, Larry Mr. Mean Smith had 24 rebounds against Utah. Now, his career high would be 25, which he recorded twice in February of 1991 as a member of the Houston Rockets.
Now, I recall reading that he had 25 rebounds in a game in the 1990-91 Recap magazine. I'm sure that you're well aware of the other Peterson's Pro Basketball. Larry Smith, yeah, who is this guy?
Great stuff there from Peterson's. Yeah, Mr. Mean could rebound. Thanks for starting the obvious, Adam. Now, March 29, there were 5 games on this date. An 11-minute pre-game ceremony to honour Julius Erving's final house call to the Boston Garden was not enough, as his Sixers lost 118-100 to a depleted Boston team that was missing Kevin McHale and Dennis Johnson. Now, they weren't actually... The doctor filled out his final prescription in Boston with an admirable 28 points. For the Celtics, Danny Ainge scored 30 points, hitting on 4 three-pointers. Could be called Danny Range after that.
Hello to David Robinson, if you're listening.
Oh, yes, an admirable effort. Good one. The last Bulls game of this period of time, mate, New York at Chicago on March 29 in front of 17,516, saw the Bulls have a great win, very solid, 115-96, and the Bulls again improved to 500, 36-36. For Chicago, Jordan had 33 points, 8 assists and 4 steals. Gene Banks, another great game, 19 points and 6 boards. Sadale Threatt, 16 points. Always a threat in the scoring column. Charles Oakley, 15 points, 14 rebounds and 10 assists, otherwise known as a triple-double. Good stuff there from the Oak Tree. For New York, Trent Tucker, 29 points. Fantastic stuff from him. Lewis Orr, 15 and 9. And Gerald Henderson didn't steal the ball but had 14 points and 9 assists.
Very disappointing, Adam. A future Bull and NBA World Champion.
Trent Tucker, oh, of course.
Doug Collins was immediately asked post-game why Michael Jordan was still on the floor with the Bulls up 113-90 with 3 minutes to go when he landed hard on the floor, bruising his left wrist. Collins asked the reporter if he had seen his team play lately and added that they didn't have the luxury of taking Jordan out after losing so many close games this season. The depleted Knicks had to sign former Georgetown star Bill Martin at the last minute just to suit up 9 plays for this game.
Now, that's a very interesting lead-in, mate, and a fantastic idbit here for the fans. Before signing a contract with the Knicks on March 29, 2 days prior, Bill Martin dropped a game-high 32 points for the CBA's Cincinnati Slammers in Game 6 of a first-round playoff series. He actually had played 66 games with Indiana in the 86 NBA season, a career high of 20 points, and in this 1987 campaign, he would play 8 games with the Knicks. In this game at Chicago, his 6 points in 13 minutes would be his best output for the season. He'd played 10 games with Phoenix in 1988, and 10 points would be his season high. Martin was a member of the Hoyas' 1984 NCAA championship team.
Wow.
I love that sort of stuff where you see a person's name. You've obviously picked up on it as well. I've then also saw the box score and thought, who's Bill Martin? There were no games, mate, on March the 30th. Therefore, that almost brings the episode to an end, mate. We'll quickly round it out with the players of the week. For March 22 was Magic Johnson of the LA Lakers. In 3 games, he averaged 28.3 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 14 assists as the Lakers went 2-1. March 29 was Larry Smith of the Golden State Warriors. His Warriors went 3-0, and he averaged 11.3 points, 19.3 rebounds, and 1.3 assists per game. The Warriors went 3-0. The individual highs in points, Michael Jordan's 56 versus Philadelphia on the 24th of March. In rebounds, Charles Barkley had 25 boards twice, once versus Denver on the 20th of March and also at Chicago on the 24th of March. And the high assist man was 19, with Magic Johnson registering that number twice as well on the 18th of March against Utah and also the 22nd of March versus Sacramento. Now, the NBA standings, mate, through March 30, our division leaders were in the Atlantic, Boston were 53-19. In the Central, Atlanta were 48-23. In the Midwest, Dallas were 48 and 24, and in the Pacific Division, the Lakers were 56 and 15, and they also had clinched a sixth straight Pacific Division title with a 128 to 111 win over Detroit on March 26. Chicago was 36 and 36. They went 4 and 5 in this span, and the LA Clippers were a lowly 12 and 58. All right, mate, that will round out episode 11 of the series. Thanks again for being a part of the show, mate. Anything you'd like to add before we do put a bow on this episode?
I'd like to dedicate this episode to my second-born son, Walter, and I'd also like to dedicate it to friends of the show, Brendan Byrne and Bill Martin. Giddy up.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show. Dave Paxton.
Oh, God.
That's a good combo, that one. For the Jordans. It's appropriate, I suppose.
Very appropriate. Despite good play from Elston Turner and friend of the show's at L3.
This is ridiculous for these friends of the show.
Speaking of the aforementioned Johnny Kerr gem, speaking of the aforementioned Johnny Red Kerr, what am I saying?
I don't know. You tell me.